You know what kind of like weirdly irks me is when people start videos by saying, we need to talk about XYZ. Like, we don't need to talk about anything, like leave me alone. But I would like to talk about the word of the year. If you hadn't heard of word of the year, it's effectively kind of what it sounds like. So one word that you pick that kind of gives you a theme or a guiding principle for the year. Some people don't like to do word of the year because picking one word for an entire year seems like a bit much. I mean, a lot of things can happen and change in a year, so that totally makes sense. I like to have a word of the year because oftentimes, even if my priorities change throughout the year, if I'm very intentional about the word that I pick, it can still fit the bill. I first heard about the idea of word of the year back when I started bullet journaling. So November 2016, I wanted to wait until the new year to pick my word because, you know, fresh start, all of that kind of thing. But much like we just talked about, I thought that having one word for an entire year was a bit of a commitment. I can't even commit to a breakfast cereal, so that seemed like a lot. Instead, what I opted to do was a word of the month, so each month I would pick a word and go with that. Whichever word I picked would be related to my goals, so for the first month I picked focus. For the second month, I picked flourish because that was the word of the year for our school. In the third month, I picked progress. And then by the fourth month, I fell off with it entirely. Part of this was probably because I was getting towards the end of using the journal in general, and also because I felt like I had to pick a new word for each month to make it kind of worthwhile. But some months, realistically, I could have just used the word from the month before. I gave up on that in 2017, but in 2018 I wanted to have another go. This time around I did decide to just do one word for the entire year, and my word was improve. Honestly, improve is a word that I do keep coming back to because a lot of the time, a lot of my goals are related to improving things, and when it comes to picking my word, I do very much like it to kind of encapsulate my goals as best as possible. So I effectively go through my goals for the year and look for common threads or common themes, pick my word based on that. But I do also kind of think that improve was maybe like a cop-out, and that's not to say that if improve is your word, it's a bad word, because I thought it was a great word, and I still think it's a great word, but because my mind kind of defaults to it, I feel like it would have been better if I had personally thought a little bit more deeply about what kind of common trends or themes or threads or whatever were all kind of holding my goals together. Realistically, maybe it's just a sign that improve should always be my word. One of the issues that people talk about a lot when it comes to word of the year is just kind of forgetting their word, or not necessarily forgetting it per se, because I think most of us can remember what the word actually was, but we don't necessarily let us kind of guide our actions, or we don't get really intentional about making choices that align with the word. I found that very much to be true when I picked the word improve, so when it came to my next year, I decided to go with a quote rather than a word. The quote kind of gave me a general sentiment for the year, this one being, I still have a long way to go, but I'm already so far from where I used to be, and I'm proud of that. Why the heck am I tearing up reading that? Oh my gosh. On this page, I also included a couple of other quotes that resonated with me as I used the journal, and it just made it kind of a nice page to look back on and be like, yep, that is my intention for the year. I need to be proud of the progress that I'm making. Is this foreshadowing? Maybe. The next year was 2020, and the words that I picked were consistency and diligence. I decided to go with two that year because I really just couldn't pick between them, and it's totally okay if in picking your word of the year, you don't want to just go with one word. If you can't find a common trend or theme between all of your goals, then pick the two that actually make the most sense. You can see that on my word of the year page, I have things like the definition and then some journaling about why I picked that word. Those are two parts that I've kept fairly consistent since I actually started making kind of dedicated pages for my word of the year. But nowadays I also like to include some goals that are specifically tied to my word too. We all know how 2020 went, so we will put that one to the side. But for 2021, my word was freedom. Now this wasn't so much related to the happenings of 2020 and feeling kind of like locked up or caged in or anything like that. This was more specifically related to my job. Again, I went with putting the word in and the definition and then that journaling. So like it says here, in 2020, I came to realize how much I hate restriction. Obviously some restrictions are necessary, hashtag keeping it COVID free, but others, like identity boxes we put ourselves in, are not. In 2021, I want to grace myself with the freedom to be my authentic self, to strive towards financial freedom, to achieve greater mental freedom by not stressing over the small stuff, freedom of time, freedom of choice. It'd also be nice to have the freedom to see my fam, but that's not so much within my control. I do think that having the journaling there to explain the word does make it a little bit more helpful because it gives you that why or that reasoning behind the picking it, which can make it resonate with you more when you come back to reflect on the page. As said, the word freedom was very much about holding myself back and not being my authentic self, and part of that meant my job, because when you're a professional, you can only be so authentic to yourself when you're actually at work. I was finding this to be quite detrimental to my overall well-being though, so my word for 2022 was jump. I'm not gonna lie, I ummed and ahed over this word for a really long time because I thought that the word jump sounded dumb. I wanted to maybe pick something that sounded a little bit more poetic. I was maybe thinking I could go with leap or something like that, though the problem being that at my school we had a program called Leap, so I didn't really want it to be leap, but I had to tell myself, like, it's okay if your word isn't super special. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a word that like resonates throughout the ages and everybody's like, wow, that's so profound. Like, we don't need that. It just needs to be something that's meaningful to you. And to me, jump represented what I really wanted to do that year, which was quit my job. That idea of like taking a leap of faith, just doing the thing, like all that nervousness and tension that builds up before you do something big. I wanted to tell myself like, it's okay to feel that, but you've got to do the thing. If you've been here a while, you know that that's the year that I did quit my teaching job to be a content creator full time and make videos like this for the internet, more specifically for you. But having that guiding principle, that word to come back to tell myself like, this is what you want. Don't let your intentions just sit by the wayside. That was really useful. Come 2023, I was working for myself as a content creator full time, as I am now. And again, I wanted my word to encapsulate the goals that I had for the year. Most of these being business related goals or work related goals. And all of them kind of came down to the idea of bigger and better. I played around with a couple of words for this one. I was thinking of grow or augment or cultivate. The problem that I had with grow is that while we have things like personal growth, that kind of thing, and grow obviously does mean get bigger, it didn't really resonate with me in terms of that idea of making things better. When I think about augment, it was the idea of adding to something in a way that makes it better, so that one was kind of interesting. But it also sounded a little bit too techie, and there was kind of this like slight negative connotation if we're thinking about like sci-fi reading, where it's like augmented reality, like, ooh, I don't know. Maybe it's just my brain overthinking, probably. But if you want your word to resonate with you, then overthinking is gonna happen. That's okay. When it came to cultivate, this was another one that just kind of gave me the like weird, like pretentious feeling, and that's not to say the word is pretentious, okay? If your word is cultivate, it is a lovely word. It really does resonate with a lot of people, and again, if your word resonates with you, that is what matters. For me though, it didn't seem to sit authentically. It's not the kind of word that I would use in my everyday life. Whereas something like greater, which is the word that I did end up going with, to be greater could mean bigger, like greater in size, but it could also mean better. And given the idea that my word was supposed to represent bigger and better, it fit really well. This is where I started to include some goals related to the word as well, though you can see I didn't actually fill it in very well. And I think that was in part because I didn't want to fill them in on camera. There's something weird about writing your goals down. It makes them very much like concrete. Like, this is the thing that I want to do. And when you're sharing those things on the internet with other people, it can feel a little weird to write them down and have other people read them. That's not to say that I should hide my goals from you, it's just sometimes it makes me feel a little odd. Coming to 2024, for my word of the year, again, I want it to encompass my goals. I want it to be related to those and bring me back to that kind of central idea or theme or intention for what I want my year to be. And the first thing that I really like to do for this is, one, figure out what my goals are, and then two, figure out what connects them. So for me in 2024, what I realistically want for myself is just to be feeling good about my choices. I want to make a choice and then a couple days later or even a couple minutes later go, you know what, that was the right choice. I feel good about what I decided here. This also extends beyond that, the idea of like 80-year-old Jess sitting there on her deathbed. I hope I won't die at 80. Why did I say that? Anyways, this also goes beyond that, thinking to like 80-year-old Jess sitting there thinking back on her life and saying, you know what, I feel really good about where I prioritized my time. Like, if my priorities are to like build better relationships with people and that kind of stuff, am I actually giving myself the time to do those things? So the first thought that I had for my word was proud. So having that feeling of pleasure or satisfaction that comes from my achievements or having made certain choices, effectively just feeling good about myself. But then when we think about the word proud, it also has some negative connotations. So maybe having a high or excessively high opinion of oneself or one's importance. And that's not what I want to bring into my life. So then I was thinking, okay, well, if it's all about making good choices, feeling good about ourselves, and we can't go with proud, maybe we could do pride instead. Like feeling pride in my accomplishments, still feeling good about it, but a slightly different word. But then we started thinking about the fact that that's one of the 7 deadly sins. And while I don't really subscribe to the 7 deadly sins so much, I say subscribe to, yeah, like and subscribe. That one just didn't sit well with me either. It wasn't quite right. Again, if I'm gonna pick a word, I need it to be something that like hits. I want it to resonate. I really want to feel it in my bones. That was a weird hand action. So coming back to that idea of feeling good about myself, feeling good about my choices, making choices that future me can be proud of, can be pleased with. And I was thinking about, okay, well, what if instead of focusing on the after effects, on the way that I'm going to feel after, what if I focus on how I will feel in the moment, or how I want to feel in the moment? So then I came to the idea of, well, maybe my word should be mindful, or the idea of like, I'm awake to the feelings of what I'm doing, I have an awareness of what I'm doing, I'm making those choices, paying attention to how it will actually make me feel afterwards. So possibly I could go with the word mindful, or mindfulness, but this isn't really quite right either. Again, doesn't really resonate with me in the same way, and it doesn't really fully encompass my goals for the year. Once you have found a word that's kind of close to what you want, so like mindful was for me, what you can then do is go and use a thesaurus to find other things that are similar but with a slightly different vibe. So that is what I did. After looking up mindful, I went to a thesaurus and found a word that was better suited for what I want. So I've decided that my word of the year for 2024 is conscious. The idea of being aware of and responding to one's surroundings, or having knowledge of something, or being deliberate and intentional. Intentional was another word that I was kind of playing around with, but conscious relates more to the feeling that I want to kind of cultivate. I said I don't use the word cultivate, but here I am. The idea behind picking the word conscious for me was being aware of my feelings in the moment, but then also being mindful of my feelings after the fact. So considering future Jess and how she's going to be feeling about any choices I make, conscious to her opinions, and then making choices accordingly based on that too. This also relates more to the fact that in 2024, I really want to let myself feel my feelings. I'm very good at telling people to feel their feelings, and I do very much believe that we should feel our feelings, but I'm not very good at actually letting myself do it. This is very much a conversation for another day, but I am excited about my word of the year, and I would love to know, are you picking a word of the year, and if so, what word are you going with? Or leaning towards? This video was a little bit different and almost a little bit rambly, and I kind of liked it. I hope you did too. If you would like to see more of this kind of just like general planner chat type stuff, cast your vote by giving it a thumbs up. Maybe we could turn it into a podcast. I make no promises because I am overworked, but maybe. My word of the year is something that I like to have a page for in my bullet journal though, so if you wanted to see me set that one up, then click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.